Hey everybody, this is HD and it's currently February 16th, which means it is Wednesday. I always have to flip over my calendar because I sit at home and play video games all the time, and so you lose track of time sometimes. But it is Wednesday. It's time for another daily ladder. I do want to try to get at least 4 out this week, and I will be, of course, doing some more pro games. And it is time to be playing some Terran. Next up, hopefully, I'm going to be able to get a couple Protosses in. As you guys probably realize, my Protoss is my worst race. In order of rankings, I think that my Zerg is my best, obviously, because I play Zerg. And then next would be Terran, and then bottom barrel would be pretty much Protoss. So that's how I rank myself. So I tend to play a lot more Zerg games, and then I play a couple of Terrans, and then my Protoss I've been working on it, I've been practicing it. Right now, I would say my PVT is, or my PVZ is best, but my PVT and PvP are pretty horrible, probably low diamond. So, anyways, this is going to be a Terran game. It looks like my opponent requested a pause, so always good mannered. I never, sometimes when you play and then someone pauses on you, or I'll request a pause and then I'll go to the front door to get like my pizza or something, whatever comes at the front, and I come back and the guy, the douchebag, resumes the game, and I'm like, oh, like 2 minutes behind in the game because the pizza guy wants a big tip and all that. So that kind of sucks. And yeah, don't do that, guys. If someone pauses on you, just let them pause. It's kind of polite, and karma. Hopefully, it'll come back to you one day. You never know. Your girlfriend might call you. The pizza might be at the door, and you'll need to pause yourself. So. Don't know why I'm rambling about that, but this is going to be a Terran game, and as always, daily ladders always feature myself playing in first-person view, which I think, of course, is helpful because it allows players to see what's going on inside the mindset and inside the actual play style of the player, not just watching from a replay perspective. So this is going to be a Terran versus Terran, it seems like. I did send out an early scout. The reason for that was because my opponent was actually random before the game began, so it was random and I didn't exactly know what my opponent was doing. So you do want to always send out an early scout, especially if you're Terran, because you need to know what race he is. The strategy for Terran changes quite a bit. Against Terrans, you don't really want to wall in, but seeing as how he was random, there's a 1 in 3 chance he was going to be Terran. I already built my buildings at the front, so I'm kind of hindered a little bit. I'm going to have to move my barracks back. And the reason why you don't want to wall in against Terrans is because towards the mid game, siege tanks can start to shell your buildings, and usually Terrans don't push until they get their tanks anyways. So you really don't want to wall yourself in. Kind of hurts yourself a little bit in the long run. And Terran versus Terran is very much about getting that Vespene gas. The Vespene gas is the most usable resource and the most scarce and valuable resource in Terran versus Terran. Because Terran versus Terrans needs to get early air out, they also need to get a lot of siege tanks out. Everything is highly dependent on getting as much gas as you possibly can. And so it's very, very important that you get your refinery down. You want to get your second refinery out as quickly as possible and start to mine that gas. Now, depending on whether or not you decide to go for early air, or if you decide to go for more of a standard mech play early on, you may need to get that second refinery a little bit earlier than usual. So this game, I'm actually not going to go for air. I'm actually going to do a kind of this isn't a solid build, I would say. It's not a build that you should emulate. This is just kind of, I'm throwing it out there. I'm trying out something new. I decided to throw 2 barracks and then a factory. Of course, my fail scoot and shoot finally gets rid of that SCV, and then I'm going to throw the factory down just to hide my technology as much as possible. And so this is going to be kind of a 2 barracks, 1 factory into expansion build, which I think is relatively safe. The only thing you have to worry about is early air, maybe some kind of Banshee play, but you can obviously get the engineering bay down for missile turrets, which is your greatest asset when it comes to anti-air static defense. So yeah, this is pretty much the build-up point in TVT. I'm getting my second refinery down. Usually, in Terran vs. Terran, the game doesn't really start to get heated up until the mid-game. And the reason for that is, like I said before, Terrans don't usually push out until they have siege tanks or some kind of air unit. And so that usually comes around the 8-minute mark, and you're relatively safe building up your forces until that point. So it looks like my opponent is going to throw down a Comsat, very wise. I'm also going to get my Stim upgrade for my Marines, which really is the most crucial upgrade you can hope to get. I think I might have clicked the wrong thing though, I might have gotten shields, I don't actually remember. But I do remember that I got one of those upgrades. You guys can see the Tech Lab spinning down there on the barracks. And I am of course getting the missile turret. Reasoning for that is just in case my opponent goes for Banshees, I'll have a missile turret there ready to defend against Cloak Banshees, and you can expect that to reasonably come around the 7-minute mark or so. But it looks like I throw down a Comsat, and because I see my opponent is going for a similar build to me, I know, hey, there's not going to be any air units. I can cancel the missile turret, recuperate some of my minerals, and just focus on mainly building up my army and waiting for that mid-game battle. Eventually, there's of course going to be an engagement, and when you feel safe, you can go ahead and grab that expansion. So I am starting to save up the 400 minerals right now, as you guys can see. I'm going to go ahead and move my SCV out there towards the natural expansion, throw down that command center, get my expansion going, and like all good players usually do, when you throw down an expansion, you kind of want to be aggressive. You want to push out, test your opponent, poke him, prod him, and abuse him a little bit. Find out what he's capable of and see where he stands in terms of, does he have an expansion? What kind of forces is he fielding on the map? And of course, the biggest effect of all is you put your opponent in a more defensive mindset, so you'll have an early edge with that command center. Now it looks like a couple of tanks obliterating my Marines in the front, which that's good. That actually tells me a lot. It tells me my opponent went for earlier siege tanks. He's not grabbing his expansion yet. I have an early edge now. I can fall back with my Marines. Didn't really lose that much. Maybe I'd say about 50 minerals each in Marines, so about 100 minerals. I lost about 2. So 100 minerals to scout. Pretty cost effective. And I actually pushed out. Notice I did get shields first, and now I have Stim researching. I actually pushed out, and I realized, holy crap, I researched the wrong upgrade. You want to push out when Stim finishes, and I actually had the wrong upgrade ticking in the entire time. So it's a good thing that I didn't actually find myself in a bad spot and was forced to engage. So I do now have Stim coming. Shields came first. It's not all that bad actually, because Shields is a nice upgrade to get if you're going for an early command center. Shields is a nice upgrade to get if you're playing defensively, which it looks like I will be playing defensively right now because I have my command center down, I have a bunker up, a siege tank, all defensive structures right now, ready to face off against my opponent when he decides to push against me. And push against me he most likely will, because remember, I had the early command center, so he's behind, he has to push, he has to try to contain me in order to get a more balanced range against me, in order to catch up and not lose this game because of an early command center from my side. So, really, right now it's just the build-up as usual, building up my forces. Remember that because this map is Shakuras Plateau, you can do a couple of sneaky things. Notice that both of us have spawned on the top side of Shakuras, and remember there is an expansion between our two bases as well as 2 destructible rocks. So you can actually be a little crazy and burst down those rocks and try to go for a backstab into your opponent's main. A lot of times players don't realize that's a very great avenue of attack, so keep that in mind. It looks like my opponent did indeed go for his contain, and he has Cloaked Banshees. So this is what you have to be super careful about. Because he has Cloaked Banshees, I don't have any turrets here. And this is because I did not scout. I didn't really throw a Comsat, didn't realize he went for a starport. And now units are starting to go down as a result. But luckily, I do have 2 command centers, 2 orbital commands, which means I have double the rate of Comsat, and that's going to come really in handy. And that's right, you want to get orbital command at your natural as quickly as possible. So now you guys can see I'm kind of in a scramble mode right now. I don't want to venture my Marines and Marauders too far forward because there are tanks down there on the ledge below, but I also need to make sure I can get these missile turrets up. My opponent is slowly but surely eking his way towards my orbital command, and this is where you need to take out those tanks no matter the cost. Even if you lose a large majority of your army, those tanks are absolutely crucial and they need to go down. So the Banshees also are a unit that needs to get taken out as well, and if you need to stim, you need to stim. My opponent wisely using the terrain to his advantage, but then mismanages his Banshee, leaving it open, and I was able to take it down, and my tank actually survives with just a little bit of health left over. So I'm going to be able to repair that. I do want to say, for all you Terran players out there, I finally feel your pain when it comes to TVT. I have to say, this is one of the most micro-intensive matches I have ever played. More micro-intensive than Zerg vs. Zerg because you're scrambling to control different units like Marines and Marauders and tanks. You're scrambling to repair, scrambling to, especially if you're in this defensive position, to repair your turrets, get turrets up, sieging and unsieging your tanks. And remember that tanks get that vision when there's a spotting unit on the high ground. That's why I had to take out that Banshee above so that the tank could no longer hit my orbital, and I was able to pick off another tank as well. So that all really does add up. And finally, I've been able to get a small sigh of relief. I was able to destroy the contain, it looks like, by killing off a large majority of those tanks. And now I'm a little bit more safer than I was before. So really, that all goes to remembering that in Terran versus Terran, tanks, I believe, I've always messed up this number, I believe they have 12 range, but they're actually limited to 11 unless there's a unit that spots for them. Something in the air, something on the ground. So in that position, in that situation right there, the Banshee was spotting for the tank down below to hit my orbital, or my orbital command, and so I had to pick it off with the ComSat, and by doing that I was able to take out the rest of his tanks. And that really all comes down to just one of the most micro-intensive matches, in my opinion, is Terran versus Terran, now that I've had some more first-hand experience playing this somewhat very strenuous, very nerve-wracking matchup. So, as you guys can see, I am looking pretty good now. Remember that I was ahead before because I had the orbital command earlier than my opponent, and he tried to push forward, he tried to contain me. He didn't do too much damage. I would say right now we're probably about even. I might still have a slight edge, and now I'm going to use that slight edge to my advantage. I'm going to strike my opponent where he least expects it. And StarCraft, like all games, when you want to win, it's all about being surprising, all about being unexpected. And I'm gonna do the unexpected here. I'm gonna bust through the backdoor rocks. Yes, this leaves my tanks exposed at the front, but I'm kind of risking the fact and hoping on the fact that my opponent isn't about to bust down my natural. I'm expecting him right now to be building a bunch of command centers, maybe building his third up, and trying to eke out a larger economic advantage over me because he just lost his contain. So I'm hoping that he's not going to push the front. My tanks are exposed, but I'm going to leave a couple back there just in case. And right now I'm actually going to push forward with my army of Marines, Marauders, looks like even a couple of SCVs to boot. And I'm going to try to take out my opponent from the back and do as much damage as I possibly can. All too often too, players don't realize about these backdoor rocks. Build a building there so you can see when those rocks are getting taken out. So we're about to see right now if my opponent Terran realizes what's about to happen. It looks like he does have a Banshee here, so he now realizes that there is a party